Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is from the corner of your eye in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 46, Search for Tsunade, Festival. Sasuke wakes the next morning with Naruto clinging tight to him like a limpet. The blonde's arms are wrapped around his waist, head nuzzled into his back, and Sasuke can't not blush, prying the other boy's hands off of him. He rolls over and immediately snags a pillow to squeeze in his grasp, and geez, Naruto's a cuddler. Someone snorts, amused, and Sasuke looks up to see a fully dressed Yamato-sensei, sitting cross-legged on his bed with a small cup of coffee. "Sleep well?" he asks. "You two had a good talk last night." He hadn't come back to the room before they passed out, so how, you were right by us the whole time, weren't you? Sasuke says bluntly, narrowing his eyes. He thought it was suspicious that Yamato-sensei would go off so easily and leave the two of them alone, and his teacher's smile grows a little bigger. "Maybe," he says. "But I wasn't eavesdropping." Sasuke really doubts that. They're ninja. Eavesdropping is kind of what they do. Still, he appreciates the gesture, and he gets up and grabs his pack to head to the bathroom to get ready. It seems like Yamato-sensei had taken his cue from Sasuke's clothes yesterday and also raided Izumi's house, but fortunately, Yamato-sensei hadn't packed dresses. Not really his thing. Pulling on black shorts, and a high-collared purple sleeveless shirt, he rummages around for a moment and is pleased when he comes out with purple arm warmers. He hadn't worn any yesterday, and his arms had felt cold and bare. Naruto is still sleeping when he leaves the room, and Sasuke rolls his eyes and shoves his teammate out of bed. He hits the ground with a loud thump and yelps, springing to his feet and staring around wildly in confusion. "Get ready," Sasuke says, impatiently, and Naruto's eyes snap to him. "We're wasting time." "Bastard dash." He lunges, and the two of them waste even more time tussling on the floor before Yamato-sensei sighs and grabs Naruto by the collar, hauling him into the air. "Naruto," he says, and he pulls his scary Yamato-sensei face once more. The boy gulps in fear. "Go get ready. We're waiting on you." "Alright, Yamato-sensei," Naruto stutters out, and when he's released, he jumps for his pack and hauls the whole thing into the bathroom with him. Sasuke shakes his head, shoving himself up off the floor, and turns to his teacher. "Yamato-sensei," he asks. "Where are we going?" The man takes a sip of his coffee. Not a drop has been disturbed. "There's a nearby festival," he says. "It's going on for a few weeks, and we believe that Princess Tsunade will appear there. She likes to gamble, and there will be plenty of opportunity." "A gambling princess? As their Hokage?" "Powerful or not," Sasuke grimaces, "that's not something he's too keen on. Still, Kakashi-sensei is fine, and he really likes porn, or liked porn, he guesses, since he burned that book." Naruto comes barreling out of the bathroom in what are probably his clothes from yesterday, nearly falling over from the weight of his bag but catching himself and snapping to attention. "Ready to go," he crows, and Sasuke rolls his eyes, picking up his bag, and follows Yamato-sensei out the door. Jiraiya is waiting at the entrance to the inn, leaning against the doorframe and yawning, and Sasuke eyes him critically before letting his gaze sweep around the entryway. Naruto's already pestering his teacher about something, while Yamato-sensei speaks with the receptionist, and there's a calendar on the wall, and it's August. Sasuke stares at it for a moment. He doesn't keep track of the days, there's no point, really. Especially since before this year, he was in school with a regular schedule and Iruka-sensei kept track of all that for him. There was never any need to pay attention. "Something wrong, kid?" Jiraiya asks, and Sasuke turns his gaze on the white-haired man and shakes his head. He looks dubious, but lets it go as Yamato-sensei approaches them. Somehow, he missed a whole month. It went by without him even realizing, without even looking, without anything. Time is slipping away. He's been 13 for a little over 2 weeks now. It's raining as they walk, and Sasuke starts working on the ball of light jutsu once more, determined to get it right. But Naruto is decidedly more somber. He glances over, and the blonde is staring at the sky. "I wonder if they've started the funeral for the old man yet," he says quietly, and Sasuke's heart catches. That's right. He had forgotten, because he had paid his respects at the shrine yesterday, but the third Hokage's funeral is today. The boy lets his ball of light flicker away, hand dropping, and focuses on the click-clack of Jiraiya's sandals in front of him. The Hokage gave his life to stop Orochimaru, gave his life to stop the man who wanted Sasuke, oh so very badly. And still he wonders why, because if the Snake Man had wanted him, why hadn't he just taken him in the Forest of Death? If he had wanted his eyes, why hadn't he just plucked them from his skull? And Anko. He remembers the last time Konoha had had a mass funeral. It hadn't been the Uchihas, there had been no public funeral for his clan, because Sasuke had been in no fit state for anything at the time and they had had to try to figure out who and how before he woke, and there was no funeral for the Uchihas. The last mass funeral that Sasuke remembers was a little after the slaughter of his clan. It happened when he was 10 years old. There had been a fire in the households of the Kurama clan, and it had killed the head, his wife, and a few others. He remembers their daughter, who had attended the academy once but not anymore, standing alone apart from all the others, and remembers the way they had a neatly lined row of pictures of every lost member. He wonders if they have a picture of Anko, a picture of her, of Anko-sensei sitting up there next to the Hokage, and Sasuke hopes she's smiling in that picture, that's the last image everyone has of her. The clouds part, then, as if on cue, a single ray of sunshine spitting out and he stops in the warmth, closes his eyes. Sasuke? Naruto asks, and he opens them to see that the other boy has stopped as well, right in front of him. It's nothing, Sasuke says. The weather has fully cleared up by the time they reach the festival, and Yamato-sensei lets both of them retrieve their wallets and then shoos them away, taking their packs for himself. Jiraiya and I will look for Princess Tsunade, he tells them, smiling, and it's strange to see a smile, and not just the crinkles in the corner of Kakashi-sensei's eyes. You two go have fun, I think you need a day of it. Maybe they do, Sasuke concedes, and given how Naruto lights up, grabs Sasuke's hand and hauls off in the direction of the nearest stall. He's okay with this. He doesn't want to think about death, today, or even how he needs to get stronger or any of that, he can't remember the last time he just breathed. Naruto's all excited about the food, and Sasuke ends up trying a million different things that day, even if he refuses to try the sweets. I don't like them, he tells his teammate, even though that near about makes Naruto tear out his hair because how can anyone not like sweets? Sasuke, that's a crime. Sasuke buys sweets at the next stand and gives them to Naruto and it works at making him shut up. When they've both eaten their fill, it's time to hit the games. Most are fairly easy, because they're ninjas and not the weak civilian playing most of the games, and Naruto's over the moon. He wins a mask and trips over his feet while wearing it. A rubber kunai goes right in his pocket, despite Sasuke's logic of, idiot, you have real kunai, and he's more than pleased with the rice-stuffed frog he gets for hitting all the right targets. Naruto tries 7 times to catch a stupid goldfish, though, before Sasuke rolls his eyes, shoves him over, and wins one handily. Okay, it takes him 3 tries, but he wins Naruto the stupid goldfish and he beams at him. Thanks, Sasuke. I've always wanted a pet, but my landlady won't let me. But she can't ban fish? Sasuke is pretty sure that actually, she could, but he doesn't say anything to ruin his mood, simply shrugs and sticks his hands in his pockets. His teammate isn't fazed by his response, grabbing him by the upper arm and dragging him over to the next game. Naruto's hand is warm on his arm, nice, and Sasuke doesn't pull away. He thinks this is definitely a date. He's not sure if he cares. It's late in the evening, a long day of just eating and enjoying themselves, that Yamato-sensei finds them. He leans over them at the stall and smiles. Make that 4 kebabs total, please, and both kids whirl around to see him and Jiraiya right behind them. Jiraiya laughs. Need to work on your sensing skills, kids, he says, and Sasuke looks away because he's right and he kind of hates it. Hey, did you find the princess? Asks Naruto with excitement, and both of the adults frown. No, Yamato-sensei says, unfortunately not. The stall owner gives them their kebabs and Yamato-sensei pays for their 3, pulling the scary face when Jiraiya tries to walk away to cow him into paying, too, and Sasuke is the one to speak up. Today has been enjoyable, but if it's going to take them a while to find Princess Tsunade, he doesn't want to waste that time. Yamato-sensei, he asks. Are we going to help you look tomorrow? His teacher shakes his head. No. Jiraiya and I will set you up to train tomorrow, and we'll keep looking. All right. That's an acceptable compromise, Sasuke thinks. Jiraiya has a jutsu planned for Naruto that involves water balloons that honestly Sasuke is pretty interested in witnessing, but Yamato-sensei pulls him away before he gets a really good look at it. Come on, Yamato-sensei says. We're going to spar, I want to work on your swordsmanship. Sasuke stares at him like he's insane. Yamato-sensei, he says. We just spent a month on this. He's dead serious, though. If you're so certain you know this, his teacher tells him, then come at me and prove it. Yamato-sensei draws his sword, and fine, if it has to be that way, Sasuke can prove it. He pulls out his sword, swiping his hand over the seal to draw out the blade of the sword, and decidedly doesn't look at it. Right. Right. He can do this. Darting forward with full speed, Sasuke brings his sword down on his teacher and Yamato-sensei pulls his up and they clash, right in front of Sasuke's eyes. It means he has to look. It means he has to see his sword, see it right in front of his eyes and... It's red with blood and Sasuke jerks back and drops the sword and staggers to the side to dry heave, hands on his knees. It's red with her blood, red and hee. Yamato-sensei sets a hand on his shoulder, and Sasuke flinches, but all his teacher does is rub his back soothingly. Sasuke, he says. I can get you a different sword. Sasuke's already shaking his head before he finishes his sentence. No, the genin says, because he doesn't think it will make a difference because it's not actually stained with her blood, not anymore, and Yamato-sensei gave him this sword, this was going to be the sword he made Chunin with, and... It feels wrong to give it up to Kabuto. Like once he's touched the sword he's tainted it. He staggers over and picks up the sword without looking at it, trying not to let his hands tremble. He opens his mouth to speak 1, 2, 3 times before he manages to form words. Aren't you supposed to be looking for Princess Tsunade? Yamato-sensei shakes his head. I sent out a clone. I can train with you here until we find her. Oh. That's good, he guesses. Sasuke inhales, exhales, tightening his grip on the hilt and then lunges forward, one more time. Again. Chapter 47, Search for Tsunade, Kakashi Interlude. Naruto, Kakashi says, when the door shuts behind the others and it's just the two of them. I need to talk to you. I'm sorry, he blurts out, immediately, and looks away. I shouldn't have told him. I'm sorry. He stares at his student, bewildered. Shouldn't have told who what? I told Kiba and Shino and them Sand Genin about the fox. Oh, and I told Karen too, I guess, a while back, but she already sorta guessed. Naruto stares at his feet and doesn't look up. I know that's against the rules and stuff, but that crazy guy Gaara has one too and I wasn't really thinking and dash. Naruto, Kakashi cuts him off, and the blonde peeks up at him. You can tell whoever you want about the Kyuubi. He wrinkles up his nose. But I thought it was against the law dash. Not for you. You can tell anyone you want. Oh. Okay. Cool. He nods to himself, relieved. Wait, then what did ya want to talk to me about? Your parents. Every single trace of expression on the boy's face wipes away, to be replaced with shock. My parents. The Hokage made it a law, he says, very slowly, that none of us could tell you. Naruto looks heartbroken. The old man. Why? Kakashi doesn't have an answer for that. Because he still doesn't know. I don't know, he says. I'm sure he had his reasons, but I don't know them, Naruto. He reaches out and sets a hand on the boy's head. I don't know if Tsunade will continue with that law, so I want to tell you now, when there's no Hokage. He sucks in air, stares at his teacher with such wide and wet eyes that Kakashi feels like a heel for not telling him before this, laws be damned. Sensei, who were they? Your father was my teacher, he says. Namikaze Minato. The fourth Hokage. My desh. Naruto's thunderstruck, and his hand curls in the fabric over his stomach. He takes a second to sort out his words, to try to figure things out. He put the fox in me. Yes, he says. He needed a newborn, and dash. So my birthday really is October 10th. He swallows, doing his best to hold back his tears. I wasn't sure if maybe people just said it was that because, or... No, you really were born then, Kakashi tells him, ruffling his hair gently. Because your mom was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, before you. Jinchuriki. Naruto stumbles over the unfamiliar word, but his eyes are so big, so wide. My mom was like me. Kakashi's heart breaks. Yes, he says. All the Kyuubi Jinchuriki have been Uzumaki's. Before your mom, it was Uzumaki Mito. The first Hokage's wife. Of course that's all Naruto knows about her, and he nods. Yeah, that's her. He stares down at his stomach, and Kakashi wonders what he's thinking, wants so desperately to know what is going through the mind of his student, and Naruto looks up, and he's crying. So he sniffles, and wipes at his eyes. They didn't abandon me? Is that what he's been thinking, his whole life? That his parents abandoned him? That the reason the third and no one else would speak of them is because they were alive and walking around? How many times did Naruto look at someone with the same color hair, the same color eyes, and wonder so fiercely if this was a parent who kicked him to the side? Naruto, Kakashi says, and he says it fiercely, firmly, because he never wants his student to doubt this. Do you know what your father asked me to do, when Orochimaru brought him back? What? Naruto asks, oh so softly. To take care of you. Kakashi isn't good with this. He isn't good with feelings, isn't good with anything like this, but he thinks what would Minato-sensei do, and he reaches out to pull Naruto into a hug, an awkward one, with his student standing and Kakashi forever trapped in this cot, but a hug nonetheless. Naruto, he says, as his student curls his hands into the back of his hospital gown, as Naruto sniffles into his chest. Your parents loved you so much. I can promise you that, they loved you more than the world. Guy is holding his hand, and Kakashi marvels at the fact that it doesn't feel strange at all. It's welcome. It's like they belong together, his hand in Kakashi's gloved one, and he almost misses Guy's question. Rival, he asks, and he says it so seriously. Do the Mednin think that Princess Tsunade will be able to heal you? Kakashi would be lying if he said that wasn't one reason Jiraiya sped up his search. He knew that, eventually, he would be approached to become Hokage, and that eventually, he would have to track down Princess Tsunade. But Kakashi's situation is a bit dire. If she can fix my chest, he says, considering, heal the damage and stop the internal bleeding, then I'll be able to leave the hospital. Guy knows him, oh so well, and he tightens his grip. But there was some spinal damage, Kakashi says, very quietly. He doesn't want to think about it. I may never be able to walk properly again. He doesn't respond to that. Really, what is there to say? The doctors haven't allowed him to try walking yet, because of the damage to his chest, and while Kakashi is normally pretty negligent with his instructions, he's also fully aware of how close he came to dying. He can't die, not yet. No matter what, Kakashi says, because he needs to say something to break this stillness. I'll stay a shinobi. I'll figure it out. He shrugs, nonchalantly, as if shinobi who cannot walk are an everyday thing and not something he's never heard of before. Guy smiles at him, at that. Of course, he says, as if he hadn't ever considered anything else. We will figure it out together. Together. Kakashi looks down, at their hands holding each other, and thinks back to that moment he had been sure he would die, when Guy had been certain he would die. They haven't spoken of it, so far, it's been a lingering thing in the air, and he's certain that if he never ever brought it up, neither would Guy. It would simply stay silent, never voiced, brushed aside. He doesn't think he wants that. Guy, he says, and he doesn't look up from their hands. When you found me, on the day of the invasion, Guy stiffens up, because he isn't foolish and he knows what's coming. You kissed me. Guy looks at him, and Kakashi looks up to meet his eyes. Yes, Kakashi, he says, very quietly and very tense. He pulls his hand away. I did. I apologize for any liberties I took, I was overcome by the heat of the moment. I dash. The heat of the moment is typically a far less excusable excuse in a completely different context, and perhaps Guy realizes that, because he looks away, hands curling and uncurling into fists on his knees. "I thought I was losing you," he says, the quietest Kakashi has heard his voice in many years. The last time Guy's voice was this quiet was the death of his father. "I apologize." If this were anyone else but Guy, Kakashi thinks, that would be what he would want. An apology. And he, too, would give his own apology, but Guy is different. Guy has always been there. He knows him inside and out and all of his demons, and typically gets him as easy as breathing. Guy is different. "I don't want an apology," he says, and he smiles underneath his mask, visible eye crinkling. "I want you to do it again." Guy's head snaps towards him so fast Kakashi thinks he's broken his neck, for a moment. "Kakashi?" he asks, unable to articulate more, and Kakashi takes the initiative. "Close your eyes," he says, and once Guy has, he pulls down his mask, leans over, and presses his lips to the other's. It takes the other man a second to respond, and then he's cupping the back of Kakashi's head, curling his fingers in the white strands, and kissing back gently. Maybe it's creepy of Kakashi, but he doesn't close his eye. He watches the way that tension seeps out of Guy's shoulders, the way he tilts his head just slightly. He feels the press of lips against lips, how they slide against each other, and then he pulls back very carefully. Guy looks starstruck as he opens his eyes, cupping Kakashi's face gently in his own and staring at his face, bared before him for the first time. "Kakashi," he says. "You're beautiful." Kakashi flushes, and pulls up the mask. He needs it to hide behind. "Ma," he says, because he doesn't know what to say. "Thank you." To Guy, at least, that was enough, and he pushes back his chair and gets down on one knee. Kakashi forgets how to breathe. "Rival," he says, oh so formally, and the other Jounin is now terrified he's going to pull out a box. "Kakashi, will you do the honor of formally going out with me?" "Oh thank God. You're paying for the dates," he says, especially because he's not going on a mission anytime soon, and Guy springs to his feet with a smile and a thumbs up. "Of course," he says, and Kakashi would love to pull him down and kiss him once more because hey, practice makes perfect. There's a pitter-patter of steps headed their way that says they're not alone, and so Guy sits back down, right before Karen and Sakura open the door. "Senseis." Sakura greets, and she steps through holding a tray. "I brought lunch. Enough pork soup for 4. There's 4 dishes on the tray, each wrapped carefully, and this looks home-cooked. "Did you make this?" he asks, and she smiles. "Karen and me and my mom did," she tells him, and he accepts the soup and the spoon that Karen passes him with thanks. Guy takes a huge bite, and then beams at them both. "This is delicious," he says, and while their attention is focused on him, he sucks down the soup in an instant and replaces his mask. He says, and their eyes snap to him and then the empty bowl, disappointed, both girls wilt in unison. "It was very good." "Sensei, how do you eat so fast?" Karen complains quietly, and Kakashi simply smiles at her, eye crinkling. He's pleased to see her opening up, and she smiles back. "How did you know Guy was here?" he asks, because he very much hopes he's not that transparent, and the two girls glance at each other and then shrug. "He's been here a while, Sensei," Sakura says, rebuking. "Hours. Karen just sent a clone to check." "A clone?" Karen flushes and looks at her feet. I've been practicing. Naruto showed me." "Be careful," Guy advises, which Kakashi thinks is the most hypocritical thing he's ever heard in his life. "Young Naruto has a lot of chakra, you need to be careful to not use too much." Karen stares at him, a little wide-eyed at his loudness, and honestly Kakashi can't remember if she's ever met the man before. I will." All of this is very fun and amusing, but Kakashi sets his empty bowl to the side and picks up his new book from the side table, holding in front of his face as he starts to read. It takes a second for Sakura to notice, but her whole face spasms when she does. She fumbles with her bowl, sticking her spoon in it before pointing at him with her free hand. "Kakashi-sensei," she squawks. "What's that?" He smiles over his copy of Parenting for Dummies. Why, he says, very calmly. My new book, of course. She does the most flailing she can while not spilling her soup, and Karen giggles. Kakashi-sensei, you know you're calling yourself a dummy by reading that. Kakashi turns his smile on her. She's a good addition to his team. Ma, I'm sure you misunderstand. It's for parenting if you have dummies. Karen nods mock wisely. Then you have the perfect book. She manages to hold a straight face for a second before giggling again, and Guy booms laughter next to her and even Sakura rolls her eyes and grins, after a minute. Kakashi smiles, too, at everyone surrounding him. The loss of the third, Hayate, Anko, and others is still so very present. Kabuto and Itaki and others loom in the distance, and Sasuke and Naruto are not with him right now, are out of his reach and possibly in danger. He may never be a shinobi again. And yet Kakashi thinks this is the happiest he's been in a long time. Chapter 48, Search for Tsunade, to be a fool. He tries again and again and he fails again and again. For 3 whole days, Yamato-sensei trains him, and for 3 whole days, Sasuke can't manage to use his sword. Oh, that's not everything that he does, of course not. Yamato-sensei makes sure that he has the light jutsu 100% finished with ease, and he spars with Naruto on occasion, but the main focus is his sword. It doesn't work. He can't. Yamato-sensei has left the two of them to spar and Sasuke still can't use his sword, still can't do anything, and he falls to his knees and dry heaves into the grass. Naruto puts a hand on his back, warm and comforting, and they both wait until he manages to breathe normally before the blonde speaks. Sasuke, he says. Why don't you try something different? You don't have to use a sword, yeah, no. Or maybe a different one. He breathes for a moment, hands curled in the grass, before he forces himself to sit down. No. No, I need to do this. Naruto scrunches up his face in a frown. Why? It's not an easy question to answer. Sasuke stares at his hands for a moment. He remembers when they were covered in Anko's blood, trying to stem the tide, and he wonders if Kabuto killed her right after knocking him out, or if he left her to die, let her bleed out until there was nothing left and she couldn't gasp for air any longer. She had been alive the last time he saw her, and that makes all of this so much harder. No finality. He never even got to see her body. Does he want to see her body? He doesn't know. I won't let Kabuto take it away from me. His teammate scrunches up his forehead to match. What? What do you mean? Articulating his words is difficult. But with Naruto's blue eyes boring into him like that, Sasuke doesn't know if he could ignore the question. People take, he says, because that's the best way he can think of. People always take stuff, and I don't want them to take things from me in, like this. Everyone takes. Even his teammates take, even if he wants him to, they still do. They've taken his whole self, and he thinks if he lost Sakura or Naruto, or even Kakashi or Karen, it would be like he's chopped off his arm. He'd rather lose an arm than lose them. He couldn't let Itachi take away his family, his home, no matter how many nightmares the compound inflicts on him, he doesn't want Itachi to take it away. He worked hard for his swordsmanship. Barely got to use it on that day of the invasion, but he worked hard for it. A weapon that Yamato-sensei had given him, as well, the first real gift he had gotten in a long time. No way is Sasuke letting Kabuto take that away from him. Naruto nods a little, but whether to show he's listening or that he really actually gets it, Sasuke's not sure. But people give, too, yeah, no. And it's okay to let stuff go and let people take. And maybe sometimes it is, maybe sometimes it's okay for people to take, like how his team has taken from him, but Sasuke sees his dumb smiles every day and he knows, oh he knows. Is that what you do? He stills. The blonde stares at Sasuke for a moment, eyes wide and hurt, and then he drops his gaze to his feet. Sasuke presses it. You just let everything go, don't you? You let people hurt you and you just smile at them and you don't care. It's different, thinking that people dislike Naruto because he's a troublemaker, because he pulls pranks and is loud and annoying and obnoxious. That's understandable, even if it didn't quite add up, even if it didn't quite make sense. But because he has the fox within him. And Naruto just smiles at everything people do. I'm going to be the Hokage and make everyone acknowledge me, he says so much, and Sasuke hadn't put the words together until now. Naruto scowls down at his feet and then turns his glare on Sasuke. Just cause I don't act like a bastard like you doesn't mean it doesn't bother me, yeah no. He shoves Sasuke and Sasuke shoves back and then they're rolling around together, tussling on the ground. He shoves Naruto into the dirt and he gets slammed into a tree and they're full out brawling by the time that Yamato-sensei returns and yanks them apart. He says, and Sasuke eyes him warily, chest heaving, but he doesn't pull his freaky face. This doesn't seem super productive. He started it, grumbles Naruto, not looking at him, and Sasuke looks away because he can't deny it, he really can't, and Yamato-sensei sighs. What am I going to do with you? He shakes them both, like disobedient kittens held by the scruffs of their necks, and then drops them on the ground. If you two think you can get along for 2 minutes, I've got some news for you. That perks Sasuke up a little. What? Yamato-sensei smiles. We've found Tsunade. They pick up Jiraiya along the way, who shows Naruto the next step in the jutsu he's learning. It looks interesting, but Jiraiya shoots him a glance, draws Naruto away, and speaks softly enough that Sasuke can't hear him. When Naruto tries, it's something that involves popping a lot of balloons with a rush of wind so strong that Naruto falls over. Multiple times. By the 4th time, Sasuke grabs Naruto by the shoulder so he doesn't fall over and waste more time, but Naruto shoots him a glare and Sasuke frowns and then glares back and he lets Naruto fall over the 5th time, screw him. Jiraiya just keeps making more balloons for him and leads the way. We have to hurry, he says. If she catches wind of us, who knows where that shrew will go next. Despite that, though, he takes his time. It's as if he truly doesn't know where to go, as if he's just peeking into stores, asking questions of passerby, moseying his way through, and Sasuke is suspicious. Yamato-sensei wouldn't have told them they had found the princess unless they had actually found her. So what is he doing? His teacher catches the glance that Sasuke shoots at him, and shakes his head. Lord Jiraiya knows what he's doing here, he says softly. He is the one who knows her better than anyone else in Konoha, we need to follow his lead, here. Well. Sasuke doesn't like it, because it feels rather pointless, but if Jiraiya knows what he's doing here then he'll listen, even if it kind of pains him to do so. Because it really does feel pointless, they wander all day. Sometimes down the same routes, and Sasuke so desperately wonders what on earth is going on in that sage's head, but he also really doesn't want to know, at the same time. Naruto doesn't seem to have picked up that right now they're just pointlessly wandering, instead focusing on the jutsu that keeps knocking him to his butt and grumbling under his breath. Another day, Sasuke might have pointed it out, but they're apparently not talking today, so he won't. It's getting later, around dinner, when Jiraiya finally approaches a pub. Well, he says. We might as well stop and grab a bite to eat here. Naruto protests immediately, which Sasuke wants to shake him for because he could actually really go for food, right about now. Also Jiraiya selected this one on purpose. Hey, pervy sage, me and Sasuke are underage. We can't drink. Jiraiya rolls his eyes. Then don't. You can just get snacks. They enter and immediately, Jiraiya locks eyes with a blonde, young-looking woman across the room. There's no hesitation. No moment of confusion or even looking around. He's probably been waiting, all day, for her to enter a location where she could be cornered easily. Sasuke has begrudging respect for that tactic, even if he wishes Jiraiya had waited and grabbed them after she was cornered, but that would probably take too long. Ugh. It had been the correct decision, even if it wasted a whole lot of training time. Tsunade. He announces, pointing dramatically. She gapes and then points back. Jiraiya. And that's how they find themselves crammed in a booth facing Tsunade and another woman, whom Sasuke hasn't heard of. They order food, and Jiraiya pours 2 glasses of sake, one for him, and one for Tsunade. For Orochimaru and Sensei, he says simply, and her eyes soften. They lift the glasses. For Orochimaru and Sensei, she agrees, and they down them. A good icebreaker, because she seems more at ease than she did before. Now, I know you didn't drag these other three along with you because you wanted to reminiscence with me, Jiraiya. What do you want? She pulls out a pack of playing cards and slides them across the table. He shuffles. Ah, straight to the point, Tsunade. It's simple. He sets the cards in front of her, and she reaches to take them. You've been summoned to be the fifth Hokage. Tsunade freezes. Sasuke waits for her to respond, but she says nothing. Instead, she draws her cards, holding them in front of herself like a shield. Jiraiya picks up his own, chooses 3, lays them down and then picks up 3 more. Tsunade, he says again. What is your answer? She closes her eyes for a moment and then drops all of her cards in front of her, leveling Jiraiya with a glare. No, she says. Impossible. I refuse. Jiraiya doesn't seem even remotely fazed, smiling at her. You know, I remember you saying those dash. Naruto springs to his feet, standing on the seat. You. He's angry, and he jabs one finger in Tsunade's direction. Why would you say no to being the Hokage? Tsunade narrows her eyes at him. Jiraiya? Who is this brat? And the 2 quiet others. This is Uzumaki Naruto. There's a flash of recognition through her face, through her eyes, and Sasuke wonders if she knew Naruto's parents or just that he bears the fox within him. Or perhaps she doesn't even know that. Next to him is his teammate, Uchiha Sasuke, and his teacher, Yamato. She recognizes his name, too, probably knows of him as the last Uchiha, the sole survivor, but there is no recognition at Yamato and Sasuke envies his teacher and his anonymity for a moment. Naruto starts literally yelling, wordless wails, and Yamato-sensei reaches over to smack him upside the head. Calm down, he says, and Naruto sits but glares at Tsunade, still. There cannot be any other fifth Hokage than Tsunade, Jiraiya says, and Sasuke knows he's lying. There's no one who can match her combat and medical skills, and she's also the granddaughter of the first Hokage. Lineage. Sasuke has never truly thought of the line of Hokage in regards to lineage, but the first 2 were brothers. The third Hokage was taught by the second, and the fourth Hokage was taught by the student of the third. The fifth Hokage, taught by the third and born from the line of the first. And then the sixth to be Naruto, born from the fourth and taught by the student of the fourth. It's a little disconcerting, to see it that way. Jiraiya, she says. Unlike your previous apprentice, this kid not only has bad mouth and wit, but he's ugly to match. Naruto goes very, very still beside him, and Sasuke wonders if she knows what she's saying. Jiraiya laughs, slightly. Oh, it's tough being compared to the fourth Hokage dash. He talks of how great the fourth is, but Sasuke is focused on Naruto, right next to him, and reaches out to take his hand under the table. Fighting or not, this isn't okay, and Naruto stiffens and then squeezes his hand, holding onto it so tight it feels like he's going to break it. But even that fourth Hokage died quickly, Tsunade says, and the boys both snap their gazes to her. She stares down at her cards and doesn't even look at any of them. Risking his own life for his village, she shakes her head. Life is different than money. To easily risk and lose it is a fool's doing. Naruto's chopsticks snap in his fist and Sasuke puts down his cup of tea, shaking. Both my grandfather and the second Hokage seemed to want to subdue the disturbances of war above all else. But after it all, they died in vain, in the midst of their dreams for the village. Sasuke lets go of Naruto's hand. The fourth Hokage, and now Sarutobi-sensei, dying so easily, she sets down her cards, tipping her head back. Hokage is a bother. Only a fool would take it on. They move as one. Naruto lunges across the table, his swipe at the woman only halted by Jiraiya grabbing the back of his jacket, and Sasuke throws 3 shuriken. Tsunade bobs her head to dodge each one before Yamato-sensei is grabbing his hands and stopping him from throwing a fourth. Shut up, says Sasuke as Naruto is hauled back into his seat. You have no right to talk about them like that. The third and Kakashi-sensei and Anko and Oboro, none of them were fools, and to claim such, He hates her. He cannot stand the sight of her, he'll defect if she becomes Hokage, he would rather have Jiraiya as their new leader. Naruto manages to haul his way up to stand on top of the table. Anyone who insults the old man and dash, he pauses, and then his face hardens in determination. Anyone who insults the fourth Hokage, my dad, I'll kick their ass. Tsunade's eyes snap wide and Jiraiya lets go of his jacket in shock and Naruto swings a fist directly at her face. Chapter 49, Search for Tsunade, the Bet. She dodges at the very last minute, and Naruto's fist hits the wall, cracking it. Jiraiya looks absolutely stunned. Naruto, he says, but the blonde ignores him. Sasuke isn't the best at reading emotions, especially those of other ninja, but shock is written on all of the adults here. Well, he guesses not Yamato-sensei, he seems completely unruffled, and Sasuke's not certain if that's because he's just that good at keeping everything locked away or that he most likely knew that Naruto already knows. Both, maybe? Probably both. It doesn't matter either way, though, because Tsunade recovers quickly, flicking Naruto's forehead with enough force to send the boy stumbling back. Jiraiya reaches out to snag his jacket once more and haul him back into his seat. Not inside, he hisses, and Tsunade smirks. You're decades too young to land a hit on me, she says. Naruto glares fiercely. You're just really old. Her smug look quickly turns to anger, and she surveys the other blonde with obvious distaste. Guess I know why the Hokage means so much to you, and Sasuke wants to tell her to shut up cause she knows nothing about Naruto, but before he can get out a word her gaze slides over to him. But you, simple loyalty to a teammate. He grits his teeth, clenching his jaw so hard it aches because nothing about loyalty or being a team has ever been simple. It's the hardest thing in the world and how dare she. I don't care about the Hokage. Naruto's eyes snap over to him, but screw him, it's true. But people who die for others aren't fools. His hands shake with anger under the table. He hadn't been a fool when he thought he gave his life for Naruto's. Sakura hadn't been a fool when she threw herself at Orochimaru. Karin and Hinata hadn't been fools when they tried to stop Kabuto, the Sandaime and Kakashi hadn't been fools against Orochimaru, none of the genin had been fools when they rose up against the sand and the sound. Anko hadn't been a fool for saving him. He thinks if he ever thinks otherwise, if he wastes what she lost, he'll shatter. And dash he swallows sharply, and it feels so. Weird to say but he doesn't care. Naruto's going to be Hokage someday. Naruto stares at him and Sasuke honest to God thinks he's going to cry for a second before he gives Sasuke the biggest grin he's ever seen, which is saying something, before he turns to look at Tsunade, determination etched in every line of his face. She looks shell-shocked. That's right. I'm gonna be Hokage, yeah no. His hands twist together, one rapidly spinning over the other as he starts to form a small ball of wind in them. It's the same movement Sasuke's been seeing Naruto do over the past few days to balloons, but before he can finish it, Yamato-sensei moves. There's the puff of a replacement and then all of a sudden Sasuke is sitting where Yamato-sensei was and his teacher is sitting where Sasuke was and the Jounin chops right through Naruto's jutsu, dissipating it. Naruto, he says, ever calm. You don't have that mastered yet. Tsunade's shock turns to rage and she glares at Jiraiya. You taught him the Raise-non? He's a genin. Jiraiya keeps his very slight frown, and looks down at the grains in the table. It's his father's jutsu, he says quietly. He deserves to know. When he's older. He shouldn't be learning such a dangerous dash. Hey, old hag, I can learn Raise-non, no problem. Naruto's glaring fiercely, but not trying to get out of Yamato's grip. He's so loud, though, and Sasuke glances around in self-consciousness to learn that yep, just about the whole restaurant is staring at them. Great. I've almost got it. Almost got it, huh? Tsunade narrows her eyes just slightly at him, and she's completely unreadable. Bragging's not a good look for you. Shut up, I can master it in 3 days. I'll show you. She smirks, and it's predatory and makes Sasuke want to shiver, if he were a weaker ninja. That sounds like it's a bet. Naruto scowls right back at her. Yeah. Hell yeah, it's a bet. Name your terms. Oh, no, whispers the woman next to her under her breath, the pig in her arms seeming to wilt in dismay as well, but Tsunade ignores her, leaning back and surveying Naruto. I'll give you a week, she says. And if you do it, I'll give you this necklace dash. She gestures to the necklace she's wearing around her neck and acknowledge you as a future Hokage. If you lose, I get all the money you've got on you. No bet, says Naruto immediately. Tsunade arcs a brow. What happened to that confidence? He huffs and folds his arms. I can do it, but I don't like your terms, old lady. I don't wear jewelry, and I don't care about you thinking I can be Hokage. But what, wait, hasn't Naruto always been about acknowledgement? If I win the bet, I want you to come back and be Hokage. She wavers for one visible, tangible second before her face sets into surety. I'll take that bet, she says, and it's done. That's about when the owner comes and kicks them out. It's understandable, they were yelling at the tops of their lungs, throwing weapons, and punches, and jutsus. Sasuke's pretty sure the timing is because of Yamato-sensei. The owner gives him a nod after they grab their stuff and leave, and his teacher's steady look seems just a touch smug. They box up the remainder of their food, pull the shuriken from the walls, and part ways. Tsunade and the woman whose name Sasuke actually never learned head one way, and everyone else heads the other. Be prepared to lose, she tells Naruto before she leaves. I'm on a winning streak. He scowls at her. So am I. The moment they're out of sight of each other, after they've walked beyond the city limits, Jiraiya rounds on Naruto. How did you know about that? He hisses, and Naruto doesn't react. He stares up at him and then quietly asks, why didn't you tell me who my parents were? That stops Jiraiya in his tracks. He stares down him, and there's a flash of pain over his face, through his eyes, so acute that even Sasuke can read every moment of it, and he turns to look away. You didn't need to know, he says, and Naruto's calmness cracks. Why not? He yells at the top of his lungs. Why not? Why didn't you tell me? I'm a genin now, I'm an adult. Even if I couldn't know as a kid, why didn't you tell me? Jiraiya brings up a hand to cover his face. There was a law dash. Bullshit. Naruto screams. There's no Hokage. You could be the next Hokage if you want, you could have told me. And what would the old man have done, anyway? Lock you up? Bullshit. You're lying, you're lying, you're lying. He takes off running. Jiraiya takes a step after him, but Yamato-sensei lays a hand on his shoulder. Don't, he says, very calmly, and the man subsides. Sasuke lingers for just a single moment more. Don't follow us, he tells them, and he's gone. It's easy enough to follow Naruto. He's not being quiet, and it's simple to follow him through the woods, and then into the trees when he does. He runs and he runs and he runs until he hits the end of the forest. That's when he sits at the very last tree, at the very end. After a moment of hesitation, Sasuke joins him. They sit together on the branch, side by side, not looking at each other and instead up into the sky. The stars are out, and it feels a little nostalgic. This isn't the first time they've sat together to watch the constellations. Why didn't he tell me? Naruto asks, very quietly. I don't know anything about them, I didn't even know who they were, and he didn't, and why didn't Kakashi-sensei do or say or anything before? I don't. Sasuke puts himself in Kakashi-sensei's position. If Kakashi-sensei had died and left a child behind, and Sakura and Karin and Naruto and Yamato-sensei were all dead, and everyone in the village hated the kid, what would he do? What could he do? 'Cause Kakashi would have been like, their age-ish, right? I'd know about Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke says, because he doesn't. Maybe he just didn't know what to do. Sasuke wouldn't. But Jiraiya's just a jerk. A sound that's a half-sob, half-laugh bubbles out of Naruto's throat, and he turns slightly to see tears sliding down his teammate's cheeks as he curls in on himself. Why yeah, he is. They sit there for a few more minutes, while Naruto wipes his eyes and sniffles, before he speaks up again. I don't know anything about them, he says softly. I mean, I know lots of stories about the fourth Hokage, I guess. So my dad, I know a lot about him, but, his hands curl into fists. My mom, Sasuke has never heard the name Uzumaki Kushina before. He hasn't heard the name Uzumaki aside from. He had wondered about Uzushio. Uzumaki Karin. Uzumaki Naruto. And now Uzumaki Kushina, 3 Uzumakis, now all in Konoha, and still not a single word of the clan, and of the village, and how Karin had heard of it but no one in Konoha had. Sasuke doubts she knows anything of Uzumaki Kushina, because she would have said something if she knew of an Uzumaki from here, but. Naruto, he says. Didn't the AIM Genin say there were Uzumaki in AIM? His teammate stills next to him. Yeah, he says. They did. Have you still been writing them? Naruto nods, wiping at his nose and turning to meet Sasuke's gaze. Yeah. I put it on my calendar, every week. Which is about 5-ish letters now, maybe 6, because it really hasn't been that long, but the second exam seems like a lifetime ago, and Sasuke considers. You could always ask them to talk to the Uzumaki there for you, he suggests. You could write those Uzumaki letters. Maybe they knew your mom. It feels so weird to be this person, this problem solver, this person fixing things and not the one falling apart, and even if it requires more effort in talking than he'd like, Sasuke is kind of glad to be on this end. It's nice. Refreshing. And the way that Naruto looks at him like he's hung the moon in the sky makes him flush, just a little. Sasuke, he breathes, his eyes sparkling. You're a genius. HN. I already knew that. Naruto laughs at that, shoving him lightly, but there's a bit of hope to him that wasn't there just a second ago, a determination, a step towards the future, and Sasuke's glad for it. Everyone should know who their parents are. He's lost his and he thinks losing the memories too would be. Well. He doesn't want to think about that. They're quiet for a moment, but it's a content sort of quiet. He can hear Naruto's breathing even out from its previous raggedness, and there's a chill in the air as it starts to turn towards fall. He can just see the barest hints of their breath. Hey, Sasuke. Yes. Thanks. Sasuke leans over, nudging Naruto's shoulder with his own, and the other nudges back, and despite everything. Despite Kabuto and his swordsmanship and their fighting earlier and Tsunade, will she honestly be Hokage? Ugh, and Naruto's parents and the tears, it's peaceful. Chapter 50, Search for Tsunade, Red Clouds. Sasuke barely sees Naruto for the next few days. It's fine, it really is. He struggles with Yamato-sensei to try to get a handle on his sword, but it doesn't work. Not at all. Sasuke, Yamato-sensei says, and he says it kindly. I think it's time to try something new, at least for a while. No. Sasuke snaps, and he glares. I can do this. Yamato-sensei sets a gentle hand on his shoulder, and Sasuke stiffens up, looks away, tries not to let tears of frustration prick at his eyes because he can do this, he can. Sometimes, it's better to step away from things for a little, and come back to them. Isn't there anything else you want to learn, Sasuke? At least right now. He's quiet for a moment. What he wants to learn are techniques for his Sharingan, but Kakashi-sensei is the only one who could teach him any of that, and he's back in Konoha in the hospital. But, there's also Anko. There's also Anko and her bleeding out in his hands, and Kabuto and his scalpel and the glint on his glasses, and Yamato-sensei. Can I learn healing? He doesn't, as it turns out, know any healing. That strikes Sasuke as very odd. Isn't it just good, tactically, to know a little bit? Even if you're no Mednin, he feels like knowing just a scrap of healing in case you're separated from your teammates or on a solo mission is the way to go, in the same way that he thinks no Mednin, that's going on missions, at least, should be without the ability to fight. Shizune is a healer, though, I'm sure she'll teach you something. That turns out to be the woman accompanying Tsunade, carrying along her pet pig for the ride. It's always good to meet new healers, she greets him cheerily, setting the pig next to her and sitting on the ground. Do you have any experience at all? Awkwardly, Sasuke mimics her and shakes his head. No. But he swipes his hand over his sword, letting the blade slip away so he doesn't see the blood, and then looks down at his hands. I should know a little. Just in case. Shizune considers him thoughtfully. It's very rare that someone knows medical ninjutsu without being a Mednin. That seems so odd. Why? It requires extremely precise chakra control, Yamato-sensei says, joining them as they sit in a circle on the ground. I do not have enough control to use it, and I haven't needed it. There's a twist to his mouth that Sasuke doesn't quite get, but it's not really what's interesting to him anyway. My teammate, Sakura, has the best chakra control, he tells her. Near perfect. Shizune smiles at that. She'd do well to become a Mednin, then. Sasuke notes that to tell her later. How good is yours? He hesitates. Sasuke is able to perform every technique he's tried. He's in the top. He has better chakra control than Naruto and yet. Sakura had gotten tree climbing so fast, so quickly in comparison. It's good, he says. But it's dash he can't actually say the words, say that he's not good enough, and he grimaces instead. Shizune understands, by the look on his face. You can still learn, but it will be hard. An upwards struggle. Yamato-sensei nods. Like you decided to specialize in water jutsu, Sasuke. Did they tag team it? He wonders if Yamato-sensei talked to Shizune on the way over, told her about him and his want to heal, and if Yamato-sensei can guess where it comes from, that Anko was under his hands and coating them in her blood and he couldn't save her then and he can't save her now. If he can't even learn. His hands curl into fists on his knees and he grinds his teeth, furious. He should be better than this. He's the last Uchiha, he was the top of his class, and all he's doing is losing again and again and again. People are dying in front of him again and again, and now he can't even learn how to save them, fighting or healing. His sword is still beyond his reach and now he can't even heal. But. Yamato-sensei, he says, eyes snapping to his teacher. I want you to teach me dash. Hey, what are you doing? Naruto asks, but it's really a yell. Always a yell with him. They all look up and he's standing, hands behind his head and eyeing them curiously. Why aren't you with Jiraiya? Yamato-sensei's eyes narrow and Sasuke's pretty sure Jiraiya's going to get it. Naruto shrugs. He's with some lady and told me to come find you. Yamato-sensei looks homicidal, and Sasuke is very glad that look isn't directed at him. He's terrifying in a way that Kakashi-sensei very much isn't, mostly because Yamato-sensei is very serious and, well, Kakashi-sensei reads porn in public. The blonde flops down between Sasuke and Shizune and looks at Sasuke expectantly. So, what ya doing? Shizune answers for him, and Sasuke doesn't know if it's because of training confidentiality or something else altogether, but she skips over all of Sasuke's questioning. Sasuke was telling me about how Sakura has perfect chakra control. She'd make a very good Mednin. Naruto puffs up a little in pride. Yeah, Sakura's awesome. She'd be great at healing. It stings, just a bit. A healer being on their team is good, especially since Sasuke's pretty certain Karen doesn't want to heal ever again, not that he blames her, but hearing that about Sakura. It's not her fault, he supposes. There's nothing. Isn't this cute? Sasuke's on his feet immediately, spinning around and then nearly toppling over in shock. It's only Yamato-sensei's immediate reach out to balance him that keeps him from falling because it's Itachi. His brother stands about 15 feet away. He's wearing unfamiliar clothing, a black cloak with red clouds, and his companion wears the same. The other shinobi towers above Itachi, a shark-like man that's like no one Sasuke's ever seen with a large sword in his hand but. Sasuke shakes and can't take his eyes off of Itachi. Itachi, the shark man says, the light glinting off his toothy smile. I thought you killed all your family. Who's this kid? He's activated his Sharingan, Sasuke realizes, and he meets Itachi's eyes. His older brother gazes at him with his pinwheeled eyes, and there's nothing in his expression. Nothing. Kisame, Itachi says, and that's it. Itachi turns his gaze onto Naruto, instead, and that's when Sasuke lunges. His sword is drawn before he even thinks and he yells, running at his brother and swinging it with every ounce of his body. Itachi dodges nimbly and Sasuke swings again. Don't look in his eyes. Yamato-sensei yells at the other two and then he's running towards Itachi, hands forming unfamiliar seals and then wood grows from the ground, wrapping around Itachi's ankles and his eyes widen, just a little, and Sasuke almost scores a hit. Tenzo, he breathes, so very softly, and Yamato-sensei smiles, very sadly. Itachi, Yamato-sensei replies, and then they're fighting. Shizune and Naruto are keeping Kisame, for that must be his name, at bay. Naruto's just spamming clone after clone after clone, and Shizune seems to be firing needles from her arms. Yamato-sensei is chasing after Itachi with wood. How is he using wood? And Sasuke throws himself back into the fray. He spits out a fireball as Itachi dodges one more round of wood and Itachi ducks underneath it, racing towards Sasuke, and he brings up his sword hastily and Kunao clashes against sword. Foolish little brother, Itachi murmurs, but Sasuke can hear every word. Did you really think that would work on me? The sword is in front of him, now, glinting with blood right in front of his eyes, and he looks into Itachi's voice and he shakes. Anko speaking with Itachi's voice and Itachi's eyes, and Kabuto and Itachi overlaid with each other, and his own younger self shape-shifting into Itachi, and now it's actually Itachi, it's actually him, it's actually. Yamato-sensei shoves him as wood rises up to trap Itachi by the ankles, and Sasuke realizes he's not breathing. He sucks in air and barely manages to keep his feet, trembling fit to burst. Sasuke, his teacher tells him, eyes serious and gaze focused. Get out of here. I want you to go find Jiraiya and Tsunade and send them this way. And leave? But dash. No buts, Yamato-sensei says, shaking his head. We need them, and you're the best for this. He's lying. Yamato-sensei turns to engage Itachi once more. Who? Just let them talk. He doesn't understand, and Sasuke knows he's lying. The best thing to do would be to send 1,000,000 Naruto clones to find them. That way everyone's still fighting, 4 vs 2, and Tsunade and Jiraiya would get found much faster than if Sasuke alone looks, but he's a liability. He can't fight. Sasuke grits his teeth and turns on his heel and bolts. If he can't fight and he can't heal, then he might as well get help, since that's all he can do, and hurry back before all of them are killed. An explosion fills the sky. The sudden heat sends Sasuke stumbling back a few steps, shielding his face with his arms and ears ringing, and for a split second he thinks this is a new technique of Itachi's, that his brother isn't letting him leave, but then a man lands in front of him. No, not a man, a boy. A teenager. 15, 16 at most. He straightens up, wearing that same clouded cloak and almost resembling Ino, in a way, and he stares in surprise. A Sharingan. Oi, bastard. I thought you were the last one, he yells, and Sasuke was always sick of being the last Uchiha, but he thinks he hates that even more. You're late, Deidara, Itachi says, somehow audible despite not yelling. Kisame laughs, and Sasuke wants to turn and look back at the 5 behind him, wants to see how they're faring in their fights, but he can't. Deidara steps forward and grins. This'll be a blast, yeah? Check the description for the links to the author.